USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Tuesday, January 28th, 2020. This episode is brought to you by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. And Jim, since the semester break, Maine is 4-1-1 and picked up two huge overtime wins on the road against Boston College last weekend.
And joining us on this week's USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of the University of Maine, that's Red Gendron. Red, what a great weekend to come down to Boston, play one of the best teams in the country in Boston College, and not just win in overtime, but do it twice. Good feeling for your club, a lot of confidence at this time of year.
Yeah, I think that was one of the outcomes of it all, beating a good team on the road, a very good team, one of the top teams in the country at that point, it certainly is good for a team's confidence.
I had a chance to talk with Jerry York a little bit, and he said he was obviously impressed with your team. He felt his team, was a few plays away from being there, and I guess that's what overtime is. But when you get to an overtime situation like that, not just one night, but two nights in a row, and it was a situation both nights where you had the lead. How did you keep the positivity on the bench? Because it seems that your players on both nights were able to go out there in an overtime period, understanding what was on the line and finding wins.
Well, I wish I could take credit for it, but I think the credit belongs to the players themselves. Truth be told, we've been in a few of those situations already this year. What happened last weekend down in Boston wasn't the first time where we've had to battle right to the end to win games, to tie games late in some cases and then win them in overtime, or, to tie them late just to preserve a tie or to earn a tie. So our guys, are led very well by, Fossier is the captain, and Doherty and Quinn Livin and Ryan Smith working with them. They've done an excellent job keeping the team in the right place all the time. So that's just who we are. We got to keep fighting and working, and that's what we did. And like I said, the players have had experience with that, so it wasn't a new situation.
I looked at the weekend, and there was obviously a lot of teams on the bottom of Hockey East, yourselves, New Hampshire, also Boston University, not that they were the bottom, but they weren't in a home ice spot and still aren't. But the ability for teams in the lower half of the league to have great success last weekend, the word desperation came to my mind, because you realize that the games are running out. If your team, you probably started the weekend trying to think about making the hockey's playoffs. Now you're in a position where you can think about other things. You're thinking about maybe home ice in a first round. What has desperation done for your team at this point in the season?
Well, I think every team in Hockey East is desperate right now. I'd love to say, we were better at that than other people, but I don't think that's in fact true. And the reality is, I worked in this league for a few different years, and when you get to the second semester's worth of league games, I think this is often what it is. Quite frankly, it's rare. Like last year, there was big separation at the top of the league, and there were three tiers, the middle and the bottom, but most years it's not like that. And so I'm not surprised at this. And quite frankly, what we think about is the next thing we have to do. Where you wind up in the standings will take care of itself if you're paying attention to the detail and practice and working hard enough and taking care of yourself away from the rink and all that stuff. You give yourself the best possible chance to win, and therefore win some games. And then when it's all said and done, you can look at the standings. But it shouldn't matter who you play, where you play them, all of that. It's a hockey game. I've said before, the puck and the sticks. They don't know who's playing and what's on the line. And the best way to approach it is to be the same way. You have to play that hard every day because that's your job.
We're talking with Maine head coach Red Gendron. And Red, I go back to the box scores of last week, and I got to see highlights but didn't get to see either game. But when I look at the names that are in the box score in scoring, you mentioned some of your leaders: Fossier, Tim Doherty gets an overtime game winner, Patrick Shea an overtime game winner, Trail Marks is there, Dar is there. You're having some of your big players show up in the box scores in these big games. What does that mean in terms of what the leadership has been, in terms of what the ability of some of your top offensive players has been?
Well, you bring up a good point. It's an old cliche in hockey that when you get to the most important games, your best players have to be your best players, and that's usually the case. It's not always true. There are times when players who might not otherwise contribute tangibly, as in the box score, come up with big plays for you. So everybody has the ability to do it, but certainly the ones that have done it before and are among the leaders on your team in scoring, the likelihood of them being able to do it is greater, and that's their job. If somebody's job is to keep it out of the net, like Jeremy Swayman, and he certainly played well last weekend, and he has to do his job. And the guys that have the ability to score more consistently, they have to do their jobs too, and that's what it comes down to. And other people have to put themselves in position to maybe contribute in those ways as well.
You just mentioned one player who I want to talk about, and that was Jeremy Swayman. On a weekend, it wasn't one of those weekends where he's pitching a couple of shutouts or giving up a goal a night. Gave up a few goals, but when I went back and looked at the stats of the weekend, he led the nation in saves on the weekend. He was tested, and he stood the test. What has he meant to your team this season?
Well, he's meant an awful lot to our team. I mean, he's one of the best goalies in the whole country. He's among the national leaders in save percentage, and he gives our team a chance to win every night. I thought he was exceptional on Friday night. We didn't do a very good job dealing with Boston College's speed. They got behind us quite a few times. They got up 2-0 in the first period, and could have been 5-0 if not for Jeremy. And that all happened in the last, 5 or 6 minutes of the first period. And because he kept it manageable at 2-0, we were able to come back and play real well in the second period and build a 3-2 lead going into the third. Jeremy's not doing his job, keeping the game close, then you wouldn't be calling me this week, having me appear on this magnificent blog. So, I'd like to say I had all that stuff figured out, but I said before, I haven't scored a meaningful goal since 1979. Blocked a shot, finished a check. The credit goes to the players.
We're talking with Red Gendron, head coach at Maine. One of the arenas that's on my list that I need to get to one of these days is Alfond Arena. And you haven't been? No, you haven't. No, it's on my list. I've been to about 40 of the college hockey rinks, but I haven't been up to Orono yet. Well,
this should have been the first one that you came to. What the heck? The heck is the matter with you?
You're absolutely right.
Anyway, I'm sorry. It was just an opportunity for me to throw a barb.
There you go. Well, everybody has been telling me how terrific the atmosphere's been there this year. Reminds them of the old days going back to what you would remember in the early 90s. But 7-0-2 at home this year, and now going down the stretch in Hockey East, you have 8 of your 9 remaining games at home. I know you mentioned it doesn't matter where or who, but you got to like being able to play at home through the stretch.
I like being able to play, you guys. I'm old, you know what I mean? And every day when I wake up and I can be upright and taking nourishment, it's great. So, you know what? I understand. It's your job. Anybody in the media commenting on this, to talk about that fact, whether it's our record to this point at home or whatever. But well, like I told you before, the pucks and the sticks don't know who's playing, what the magnitude of the game is. You got to go out and play, right? And there's no guarantee. So I don't even stop to think about that. I don't allow myself to do that, and I encourage. And you win hockey games by executing a myriad of little things that and over and over again. And when you do one thing right, it gives you the opportunity to do the next thing right, and so on and so forth. When you play at home or on the road, it's the same recipe for success. To end up, when the game's over, to have more goals on your side of the scoreboard than the opponent. And that's how we really, really try to think around here. And that's just the way it's going to be, at least where I'm the coach.
More with Maine head coach Red Gendron in a moment. First, a word from the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
Every time you show up, every time you make your presence heard, whether you clap your hands or stomp your feet, lead the chant or join the chorus. However you choose to be a fan, you make the game. The NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 to get your tickets today.
USCHO Spotlight continues with Maine head coach Red Gendron. You've been around both as a head coach and as an assistant with some success, whether it's Maine or Yale, whether it's state championships in your early coaching days or with your time with the Devils organization. Is it those basic things that lead to success, or is there something else in there that makes the difference between being a champion and being an also-ran?
And there's all sorts of things, Bud. That's the beauty of hockey. But any team sport, you have to execute, your fundamentals. And, there's certain things you do them exactly right. Sometimes it doesn't yield, big time results. If you make a good play, it doesn't mean you're going to score. Pass. You make a good shot, it doesn't mean you're going to score because the goalie on the other side makes a better save. But when you're constantly playing to your identity and executing the fundamentals of your systems and the fundamentals of hockey in general, and you're adhering to the game plan and executing that well, that's how you give yourself a chance to win. But there are things like the mental factor, and there are things like how the players live their lives away from the rink and how much sleep they get and everything else. And so there's a myriad of things that go into it. And a lot of times you work all year long, and it never really all comes together. And then there are other times when it does. And, we can't say that it's come together. We can say we're in the middle of the process right now. And we're just going to keep working one day at a time. Today we had practice, okay? I can tell you that it was a good one. And so now that's gone, and it's about how we practice tomorrow. And that's how we try to approach things as best we can. And we try to ignore the noise of people like you guys, and it's your job to do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm delighted to chat with you about it, but at the end of the day, you focus on the things that are important. As my good friend Wally Bisdell says, keep your mind where your feet are.
Given what we can tell is your joy of being around the arena and working with the players, what is the best part of your job as head coach at University of Maine?
The best part of my job is seeing people grow as individuals and collectively as a team when they really begin to feel, and you can see it, the value from all of their work and whatnot, whether it's developing as an individual player or collectively as a team. You've been doing this for a long time, and there's been good years and bad years, and everything in the middle. But at the end of the day, I consider myself quite fortunate to be able to wake up in the morning and get paid to still mess around in the kids' game and hopefully help our kids learn some lessons that will extend far beyond their lives in hockey. That's the hope. And so that's what sustains me every day. I consider myself fortunate, even when we don't win or we don't play well and get beat badly. At the end of the day, it's all about getting up and doing it again. And if you stick with it, people who don't quit, they never fail. That's the bottom line. Failure only occurs when you surrender. So that's how we conduct our business here.
That's the right mentality. We're talking with Red Gendron from the University of Maine. And Red, this week, it was actually, I guess, last Friday, Sacred Heart University announced that they're going to build a 4,000-seat arena on campus. That's been a program that's been on an upswing of late. Their athletic director, Bobby Valentine, wasn't too shy about saying that he would explore some other leagues other than Atlantic hockey. Obviously, Hockey East is looking for a 12th member. Not asking as an administrator, but just as a coach. What are your thoughts if that was a school? Obviously, it's not exactly next door to you. Nobody's next door to Orono, exactly. But would that be a school that you think could maybe fit this league well?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, any school that's going to commit, whether it's the scholarship dollars, the operational dollars, the quality of the facility, is somebody that our league ought to entertain as a potential new team, a potential addition to our league. There's no question about it. And CJ Maritolo's been a friend of mine for many, many years. I got to know him well when he was Tim Taylor's assistant. God rest his soul. One of college hockey's all-time greats, and he's a good man, and he's worked real hard to develop his players and his program, and do it without a rink on campus. I happened to see him. We were down in Bridgeport, which is where they play their games. It was the same place where the Sound Tigers play, the Islanders American Hockey League team. And, they have a pretty good setup there, but there are times when they can't practice there because the building's used not only for hockey, but for other events. And, his players have to drive up from campus, and then they have to suit up at the rink in Bridgeport, and then they have to go to another hockey facility somewhere in the Bridgeport area and whatnot. And when I see people like CJ and his kids dealing with that and finding ways to be successful, it's pretty cool. So, like I said, as far as the next team in Hockey East, that's above my pay grade to make those decisions, but my feeling is if a school wants to commit to what it takes to be in the best league in college hockey, then that's great.
I want to look ahead to this weekend and maybe a little bit to the rest of your slate. The way that your schedule shakes out, you'll play 2 against Merrimack this weekend, then a single game against Northeastern, a couple against Connecticut, a couple against Vermont, then you close with a couple of single games. A lot of people would say that's a pretty friendly schedule, the fact that you don't have to go back-to-back all the way. Talk a little bit about that schedule, and then maybe also a little bit about Merrimack. They get 3 out of 4 on last weekend, and they're now in position to maybe get into the playoffs. 2 very desperate teams. I called your team desperate at the start. They're probably feeling the same way. What does a Merrimack team bring to this weekend?
Well, Scott Bork's done an excellent job with their team. I mean, they compete like crazy. They're physical, hard-nosed team. They sprint and compete, for pucks all over the place. And, they haven't won that many games, but they're in almost all of them, and they've beaten some good teams, so they're a legitimate opponent. And like you say, they're going to be desperate. This is an important weekend for them, I'm sure. And so, it's like I said, it doesn't matter whether we're playing at the Alfond or if we're going down to Lawler Arena. Both teams have real good reasons to succeed in the weekend.
How about the fact that you don't have to compete 2 games every weekend here on out like a few of the teams in Hockey East? Will that, at least in recovery, help you a little?
Yeah, there's no question about that. Being at home, not having to be on the road. Our schedule was a little difficult early in the year because we spent, something like, 13 games on the road before the end of the semester, right? And so now we're reaping the benefits of that. But when you get to this time of the year, having 1-game weekends, allows you the opportunity to give players rest time, emotional as well as physical, and it gives you more time to prepare. So it's all very, very positive for our team. But the reason why we're in a situation like this is because Hockey East has only, 11 teams. So there have to be these 1-game weekends as a result. Yeah, because we don't have an even number of teams. So, some teams can only play 1 game in a certain weekend or whatever. It's one of the reasons why we have more weekday games during the course of the year than we've had. And, when we had an even number of teams in the league, that's just how it is. And so, in this particular case, we have, a lot of games at home at the end of the year, and we have a lot of single game weekends to close out the season. So that's the reason.
Well, it'll be the first time since January 4th your team has played an official game at home. 4-1-1 in the last 6 games, and that is a good streak to take into a 2-game series with Merrimack. Red Gendron, thanks so much for your time today, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, guys. It was a real treat chatting with you. Be good.
That's Maine's Red Gendron, and that was a fun time talking with him today, Jim. And his final answer sort of contradicted his earlier answer about home ice advantage. 7-0-2 at home in the early part of the season. From what I hear, the crowds are back and as raucous as ever at Alfond Arena. And now 8 of the next 9 games are at home. Yeah,
and listen, I know that you said that you haven't been there and you got a lot of guff from Mr. Gendron for not going there. It's a fantastic barn. Anybody that's been to Orono understands that when their crowd, and they are a finicky crowd, if your team's not playing well, they're not going to turn out. But when Maine is playing well and that crowd is in that arena, I've never seen, at least in Hockey East, a crowd that can be that dominant. I compare it to places like North Dakota. I compare it to places like Denver. I compare it to when the Minnesota Golden Gophers are playing well, what the atmosphere can be in Mariucci. There is not another building in Hockey East that can replicate that the way that Orono does. Their stands, this is still an old building, and their stands, their balconies almost overhang the ice. So if you're a goaltender, you feel like the students are right on top of you. You hear them the entire game. It's just a great college hockey barn, and I need to use the word barn because it's old and it's the character that the place has. But there may not be, when Maine is playing well, a better home ice advantage in the league.
Right now, Maine tied with UConn in the standings and ahead of Merrimack and Vermont. Those are 3 of the teams they face coming up, also Northeastern and Providence. The Black Bears are in a good position not only to clinch a playoff berth, but to vie for home ice.
It's strange because, you went into last weekend thinking maybe there were 6 teams in Hockey East that could be in a battle for home ice. Now suddenly there's 9. And that was not expected. And when you really look at where Merrimack is, they're going to battle Maine's opponent this weekend. They're going to battle to maybe get into the playoffs and knock somebody out. So if you're in the bottom 6 of this league right now, if you're not in the top 5, you're going to be actually worried about making the playoffs. And if even a team in the top 3 or 4 right now falters, boy, things can get really scary. If you go 0-6 over a 3-game weekend, 3 weekends, that is scary. And, at the same time, if you go 6-0 over 3 weekends, you can jump from almost the middle or bottom all the way up to the top. So it's a strange scenario. I don't remember Hockey East being this close. We've always had races for first place, fourth and fifth, and then maybe when there's been teams eliminated, as there have been in the last few years, 8 and 9. But we have not seen something like this. This is a crazy scenario where 6 points separates first through ninth.
And it may come down to the last weekend for the Black Bears and their opponent, the Providence Friars. 2 single games, Saturday the 29th of February, March 6th on a Friday night, that final game at Alfond. That may determine a whole ton in Hockey East.
Listen, I just automatically start to give Maine an advantage right now. The fact that they're playing 8 of their last 9 games at Alfond. They've been so good there. They will get that atmosphere. It will be a tough place to play. I think that this Maine team not only is battling to get into the playoffs, the way I look at their schedule, I think that they're in a really good position to maybe have a home ice berth in the quarterfinal round.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of USCHO Spotlight. You can see all our podcast listings at uscho.com/podcasts. This episode has been brought to you by the 2020 NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.